Welcome to the Money Mentors Podcast.
We know a lot of you pay attention to what's happening in the financial headlines out there, and here with your Money Mentors every week, we like to dive into what's happening financially, explain to you how it affects you, your world, your retirement, and your dreams, your goals, your desires. But, in listening to all of the other financial chatter this week here, Gerald and Laurel, about the Federal Reserve trying to tame inflation here, I thought, wow, it seems like we have been hearing about this topic for a long time now. So I went back in the archives to 2 years ago this week. And here's what Fed Chief Jerome Powell was saying about it at that time.
I'd like to take this opportunity to speak directly to the American people. Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it is causing, and we're moving expeditiously to bring it back down. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses.
And yet, here we are. We're not seeing the 7, 8, 9% inflation anymore, but it's still not anywhere near the Fed's target rate of, at the time, what he was saying was 2%. So we're paying more than ever, too, I think, for the things that we buy the most. You look at food costs, eating out, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But is there any bright side here based on what's happening with inflation and interest rates?
Well, we've seen the peak hit. I think that's a general consensus. Mm-hmm. We saw inflation over 9% at one point, and now we're above 3%. So we've seen peak inflation, but you have to understand what they're really talking about. I think everyone, or a lot of the conversations I'm having with some clients as well, when inflation comes down, I won't be spending as much. I'm like, well, no, that's not it. It just means prices aren't going to go up as fast. Pre-COVID, we saw those inflation numbers really be very, very low for a long stretch of time where we weren't seeing price increases to the extent that we are now. That was a good thing. But the bad thing is, think about wage increase along that same line. You weren't seeing the cost of living adjustments in Social Security. You weren't seeing the type of turnover in the workforce because there were other better paying jobs out there. But now we're seeing that. So now with everything that's going on, we are seeing that great shift or change where people are changing their careers or changing their employers, and they're getting a huge raise for it. And that's a good thing. They're making more money, have more discretionary income, which means they're spending more, which ties back to the inflation number going back up. So it seems like a vicious cycle, but eventually it's going to calm back down. This is what would be considered a normal inflationary environment. Somewhere between that 2 to 3% is normal. What we saw coming out of the great financial crisis of 2007, 2008, to pre-COVID, that wasn't normal. Money was cheap, 0% interest rates. You buy new cars, 0%. Your home was 2.99 or 3.5%, and that was cheap too. We don't want to go to the other end of the spectrum where late 70s, early 80s, you had a mortgage interest rate of 15% and a savings rate of 16%. Like, sounds good, but there's ups and downs to every. And it's always going to continue to evolve and change like that. You have to make sure that for your own personal needs, that you're monitoring what you're spending and that your investment strategies line up with what that income not only costs today, but what it's going to cost 5 years from now, 10 years from now. That has to be taken into account.
Yeah, and you look at it in those two ways to say interest rates being high, it's bad for borrowers. Right? Like Gerald's talking about when you're looking at interest rates, things like that to borrow for homes. But it's good for savers, right? We're looking at these high yield savings accounts and what's available out there. We've talked a little bit about refinancing some of your annuities if you have an older annuity and need some more growth potential and might need a second set of eyes, right? That's another potential opportunity there. But it all has to go towards a goal. What is your end goal? That's where we start with those dreams, goals, and desires and work our way back to put that detailed plan together.
Yeah. So one of the most common questions I get is, I need a budget in retirement. I'm like, no, you don't necessarily need a budget. I don't like that word. I don't like the word budget.
Yeah.
You have to know what you're spending and what you can spend. When I'm working, especially with younger clients, it's, how much can I put away and things like, well, what are you spending? Well, I don't know. That's where you have to start. Figure out what are you spending every month. And I'm not saying you have to create a budget, but if you don't know what you're spending, then it's tough to allocate those dollars to that bucket Because if you set yourself, say, okay, I'm going to spend $400 a month for groceries, but for the last 3 months, you've been spending $700 a month, well, that's not realistic. And what happens is you overspend, or you think you overspend, and now you're going to stop saving, and that creates a cycle where, well, I can't ever get ahead. You have to know what you're starting from.
Real life lessons about your retirement. You're listening to the Money Mentors Podcast.
Our summer savings series continues this week here on Money Mentors with an idea specifically here for married couples, one that could potentially double your retirement savings if you work this properly. So let's say your spouse does not work, but you have more than enough income to actually pay the bills. There is an option out there that lets you sock more money away for your husband or your wife, potentially even tax-free. Gerald, Laurel, what are we talking about here?
Spousal contributions.
Yep.
Okay.
It's a beautiful thing.
All right,
Yeah,
does it go in a different account?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it can, right? I mean, with spousal, you got married. You know, this is one of the benefits of getting married that they don't talk about in the church.
Right.
In this example that you gave, Jennifer, I mean, you've got one person working, the spouse not, and the one who isn't working thinking, well, I don't have a 401k that I contribute, so that's all on, the other person. They have to save everything. No. As long as there's working income in there, that allows the non-working spouse to actually contribute into a traditional IRA or a traditional Roth IRA. And I always like the Roth because, hey, pay the taxes up front, because chances are, historically speaking, taxes are going to go up rather than go down. So the more you can prepay those taxes, the less you have to worry about them later. But as long as there's working income, you may be able to make contributions regardless of if that income is yours.
And if it isn't an IRA, not a Roth IRA side of it, that can help your taxable income come tax time, right? But you don't want to wait until that time to start doing all these because you're dealing with deadlines, etc. So you want to make sure that you're constantly working on this tax plan. It's not a one-time, we're going to come in, develop all of this, set it and forget it. We're working at it every year because Washington changes the rules on us too. So we have to, stay adaptable and flexible. And that's how we also formulate your plans.
Yeah, the only constant is change. So the more often you have those conversations around change, whether it's income or health or taxes or savings, the better adaptable you'll be later on.
Want weekly lessons from your money mentors? Yes. Hit the subscribe button now and listen every weekend on Wood Radio.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Fee-based financial planning and investment services are offered by Matson Financial Services, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance products and services offered through Lakeview Financial Group, LLC, Matson Financial Services, LLC, and Lakeview Financial Group are affiliated. To find out if Matson Financial Services is licensed in your state, please call 800-536-8907.